Hey everybody, I'm Joe Mayers, and this is the Think Forever podcast. This week is the conclusion of last week's story, so if you didn't listen to last week, I would recommend going back and listening to that one first. So please enjoy part 2 of Nick Steward's story, Lost. "Let's stop for water," Soccer said as they walked down the beaten, dusty trail. They had been walking for almost half a day since they met by the river and had made few stops. They had come to enjoy each other's company, both having been alone before their transient union. "Sure," Amin said. He placed the scrolls down on a rock, as he did each time they stopped to drink. They drank from their hands, joyous slurps all around, and Amin wondered how much longer it would be until they were in Alexandria. The only stillness Amin got was from water breaks. That's probably why he was so lost in thought whenever he stopped to drink. He thought of the personal details he had told Makarios about he and his father, how his father said he was dead to him. "Dead to me," echoed in Amin's head. Now, the more wise and loving father figure in his life was really dead. Nothing figurative about it. Dead to me. "So, those scrolls," Soccer said. He sat on a rock by the water and watched as Amin kept drinking. Amin was shaken loose from his stratospheric thoughts and came back down to the river. "What's written in them?" Soccer asked. "I don't know," Amin said. "I'm just delivering them." "To who?" "I don't know them personally." "Can I go the rest of the way with you? I don't really have anywhere else to go." "I thought you were going north." "I am, but I didn't have any real plans once I was there. I'd rather come along with you. Join the mission." "Sure," Amin said. Soccer reminded him of himself in that way. It wasn't more than 2 days ago that Amin had wandered the same way. "I'd love some company. You can keep me from getting lost." He had grown to enjoy Soccer's company on the trail. He thought they could even be friends. "Thanks," Soccer said with a smile. He seemed content to have a friend in the world, a traveling companion. "I hope monks can cook." Amin laughed. The meal he had with Makarios the day before had been good. It was fish and fruit. There didn't seem to be much cooking, but Makarios had mentioned they had meat for dinner sometimes. He had a twinge of mourning when he thought of his friend. Makarios was dead. He wondered how long it took to become as wise a man as him. Maybe the scrolls were a good place to start. In the day that he had spent in the monastery, he learned that Makarios knew a lot about these scrolls. He could build furniture, and he knew how to tell great stories. But Amin never learned if he was a good cook. But come to think of it, why had Soccer asked him that? He thought it over, and he wasn't sure he had ever mentioned that he came from a monastery, or that he was on his way to another one. Why would he say that? Why would he assume Amin was going to see a monk? "Hey," Amin said, trying to stay casual. Soccer looked up from the river. He had been watching the river as it rolled and left them behind with all their problems. "When we first met," Amin said, hesitating, "I asked if you knew how to get to Alexandria, and you said you could." "Right," Soccer said, not seeing his point. "You said I had veered off course." "Okay." "How did you know I veered off course?" Soccer had been nodding, but stopped abruptly. "You said you came from the Nile." "No, I didn't," Amin said. "And why did you say you hope monks can cook? I never said anything about monks." Soccer was quiet. He looked like he didn't know what to say. You were with them, weren't you? You were watching me. Soccer sighed and looked at Amin with contempt and pity. What's better than getting what you took? What? You took something when you fled the monastery. What's better than getting that? What? Amin said impatiently. Getting where you take it to. You were going to follow me wherever I took the scrolls and then rob them too? Soccer was quiet again. Amin got up and ran up the bank, and just before he got to the scrolls, Soccer grabbed him by the ankle and dragged him back down. He felt the ground through his tunic as his chest dragged, and it scraped his chin too. He kicked and struggled until Soccer lost his grip. Soccer trying to grab Amin's wrists so he could restrain him again, but didn't get to them quickly enough, and Amin was able to punch him. He took advantage of the opportunity and landed another blow before he struggled back to his feet. Then he lifted his leg up to kick the disoriented Soccer, but before he could, Soccer grabbed his leg and pulled him down the slope. Amin slid and rolled down to the water. Soccer went to him and grabbed his shoulders. He held him down in the muddy river edge and said, "Where are you taking these scrolls?" He lifted Amin up from the water to let him answer, but he wouldn't open his mouth. Soccer dunked him again and asked the same question. He repeated this over and over. Amin thought he was going to die, and his father came to mind. He thought of the way they had last spoken, when his father said Amin was dead to him. Then he thought he might end up dead for real and would never get the chance to speak to him again. He couldn't breathe, and his opportunities for air were getting less and longer between. Once, when he came out of the water again, he kicked up, his shin went between Soccer's legs, and Soccer dropped to his knees with a look of disbelief. Amin got up to his feet as quickly as he could, considering his depleted strength, and kicked Soccer into the river. He had to run. It wouldn't hold Soccer for long. Like panic and chaos in a tunic, he ran up the bank, grabbed the scrolls, unable to dry his hands on his wet clothes, and took off down the trail. He had to get off the path and hide. His only hope was to outlast Soccer, wait for him to pass, and come out once it was safe. He covered the scrolls as well as he could with his arms and went into the reeds beside the trail. He went a few hundred yards off the path and hoped Soccer wouldn't endure the same treacherous route. Once he was so far gone he couldn't see the trail anymore, he sat down against a rock. It was comfortable, as far as rocks go, and that seemed as good a place as any to wait a while. At first, Amin sat and caught his breath, but after a few minutes he was still enough to wonder how long he should wait. How would he know when Soccer was gone? Half an hour had passed when he looked down at the scrolls he still held in his arms, the scrolls Soccer had almost murdered him for. How could he have judged him so inaccurately? He never had a sense that he was being lied to or taken advantage of. He'd even started to think of Soccer as a friend who tried to kill him. And for what? Parchment? Paper? Scrolls? How could they possibly be worth the trouble he had suffered for them? He barely knew the monk who asked him to deliver them. How did he know it was worth his time, much less his life? He took one of the scrolls and slowly, carefully, unrolled it. His hands were dry now, but he cringed when he saw the wrinkles his hands had made on the paper earlier when he grabbed them with his wet hands. He saw the fine handwritten characters on the page and felt as if he was looking at a piece of fine art. He read, "Paul, a servant of Christ Jesus, called to be an apostle, set apart for the gospel of God." He had no idea who Paul was, but he sounded important. He called himself a servant, though. What servant had such stature? He kept reading every glorious word of Paul's letter to the Romans. He read of mankind's guilt before God and how Abraham had been counted righteous by his faith. that his faith was in the Messiah coming to save him, and not by his own works, but by God's. How mankind can be free from the curse of sin and death by faith in the Messiah and his work. That Christ's followers were heirs of everything that belonged to him, chosen before the foundation of the earth, and that they would be resurrected from the dead unto glory. Amin didn't realize that another hour had passed as he read the entire scroll, engrossed, transfixed by what he read. He felt he understood none of it, and at the same time understood everything now. He felt as though his life had changed, or his very soul, and he would never be the same for learning the things he had. Earlier, he had feared that his life was coming to an end while soccer drowned him. It turned out that, in a way, he was right. The life he knew was gone. He was somehow different, and he had the sensation of breathing in a new life. He rolled the scroll back up and put it down on the rock with the others. He got onto his knees in the dirt and lifted his eyes to the sky. He prayed to God the Father, who he read about in Paul's letter, and felt a love and assurance he never had before. His sins had been paid for, and he was counted innocent before his holy God. He had to get that scroll and all the others to Alexandria. If it could do for anyone else what it had for him, he had to deliver it or die trying. It was almost dusk. He had maybe an hour more of daylight before he would be plunged into darkness with the rest of the wilderness. It was better to stay put, spend the night, and be sure soccer was gone in the morning. The next day, Amin resumed his journey with renewed purpose, and after 12 more hours of travel, he crested one last hill. His throat was dry. He hadn't seen water in hours, but he saw a shepherd tending sheep at the bottom of the hill. The shepherd waved to him before they were close enough to see each other's faces. Amin was cautious, already having dealt with dangerous strangers, but he tried to be logical. Most thieves don't masquerade as shepherds with massive flocks. He decided to approach the shepherd, who was still a half-mile down the grade. A few minutes later, when Amin was finally close enough to shout, the shepherd yelled first. "Hello there," the shepherd called. Amin waved, but felt odd addressing him still so far away. Once he was close enough, he said, "Hello," from 30 yards. His voice was hoarse, as dry and cracked as the road he had walked. "You look tired," the shepherd said. "That's safe to say." "Water?" "Very kind. Thank you." The shepherd handed Amin a skin of water with a thin top to drink from. Amin drank deeply. It was so refreshing it almost made him want to cry. As he drank, he thought about how the last stranger he met had almost killed him with water, and now another stranger saved his life with it. He almost laughed a little bit as he handed the water back. "Where do you come from?" the shepherd asked. "The Delta," Amin said, and wondered if that was the right answer. It's where he had come from most recently, that much was true. "What's with the scrolls?" the shepherd asked. He seemed very interested. "I'm delivering them." "What are they?" Important." "Obviously. What are they?" "The word of God," Amin said, echoing what Makarios had told him. "Where are you taking them?" "I'm trying to get to Alexandria to see a man named Cyril, but I'm not sure how far I have left to go." The shepherd laughed. "Well, you're certainly not lost." He put a hand on Amin's shoulder and said, "God plans everything, doesn't he? I can take you to Cyril. If you're from the Delta, you must know Makarios. Did he send you?" "Makarios is gone," Amin said. "But yes, he sent me." The shepherd looked down and mourned for a moment, but saw the scrolls again and was reminded there were bigger things to do. Let's get you where you're going, the shepherd said. The shepherd walked Amin into the monastery. It was remarkable to Amin how similar the place was to the one he had left under siege. There was a courtyard, and men in robes, and scrolls carried from place to place. Wise men imparted their wisdom to the younger, just as Makarios had done for Amin. "Cyril!" the shepherd shouted. An older monk with a beard in a dark robe walking across the courtyard turned his head and looked. "Hello, my friend," he called from across the way. "What brings you here? I suppose the sheep aren't great conversationalists." "I have someone who needs to speak with you," the shepherd said as he and Amin got closer to Cyril, meeting between the 2 points from which they started. Cyril looked upon Amin's weariness, the strain on his face, the dirt on his sunburned skin. He could see that he had come a long way and been through much. He saw the scrolls in his hands. "What have you got there, my friend?" he said to Amin. "Makarios sent me. He—" "Ah!" Cyril interrupted. "Makarios is a great old friend." The shepherd already looked regretful. Amin stopped and tried to say it gently. "I'm sorry." Cyril was disheartened at the news, but saw that Amin was also. The two strangers already had a lot in common. Amin tried to explain. "The monastery was—" Cyril interrupted him again. "My friend, there's time enough to tell me of the horrors you saw. Why don't you tell me what's in your hands?" Amin handed the scrolls to Cyril, and Cyril unrolled one and read. Then he smiled as he recognized it. "The letter to the Romans. St. Paul. It does a heart well, doesn't it?" "Definitely," Amin said, as if talking about his favorite dessert. "There's still a lot I don't understand." Cyril called to another monk who came to them. "Take these to the scriptorium," Cyril told him, "and prepare some food for our friend." The monk went running to do as he was told. Cyril looked back at Amin and said, "I'm going to get you fed. Then tonight before dinner you can take a bath and a nap. How does that sound? It looks like you need it. Over dinner you can ask me anything you want about that scroll." Amin lit up, more for the lesson than for accommodations. "It would be an honor, sir. Thank you. But I'll have to leave tomorrow." "Why?" Cyril said, surprised. "You just got here." "I have to get home and have a word with my father." Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Think Forever podcast. If you're enjoying the show, we would love it if you would leave us a review. And don't forget to join us next week when I will be interviewing author Nick Steward about his story, Lost.